You can't support me for being a lesbian. You can't support me for being under the asexual umbrella and then discriminate me for being a trans woman. It's not how it works. Hello, you are watching Dwell On It. I am Taylor. This is a series where I answer your questions about my lived experience as a trans woman. If you'd like to include your questions for a future episode, please don't hesitate to send them to me by a DM or comment or whatever other medium reaches out to me, and I will get them added to a grab bag to have them pulled out randomly in a future episode. What I would like to address very quickly before we get started is in the description are 2 links for fundraisers that I am part of, and I would appreciate your support for that. One is for Run for Women, which is supporting women's mental health and mental health awareness and women's wellness programs, especially in Manitoba, coming out of Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. And the second is going to be for Walk for MD, which is supporting research and supporting Canadians who require assistance, and the families, of course, of those individuals too who are looking for support when dealing with muscular dystrophy or realistically anywhere from over 160 neuromuscular disorders. So both of those fundraisers are in the descriptions. Target for each one is $1,411 for each. One is going to be on June 5th, the other is on June 11th, so please add your support as soon as you can. You will get a tax receipt as well for any online contribution that you make, so please make sure to take a couple moments, jump in the description, share that as well when you're done. Speaking of sharing, while you're here, if you're new to the channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe. If you already are regularly visiting the channel but have not subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe. Hit the like button if there's content you enjoy. And frankly, hit the like button as well anyway, because what that does is it helps boost the awareness of the video so others who are interested in similar topics will see that it is a promoted video and a recommended one to be seen. So do me a huge solid, as I mentioned, hit that like button. And as I alluded to with sharing, I can only reach who I'm able to reach. By you sharing, that broadens that range. So do me a huge favor, make sure to share this as well. Use the share button on whatever social media platform it is that you're checking this out on. Encourage people to take a look at the channel, and I'm more than grateful for everybody who inspires and encourages others to really absorb, dwell on it, and the other content on my channel too. Before we get started, as we did in the last episode, I'd like to do a very quick visual description. Today I am wearing my hair up in a little bit of a higher ponytail. It is a dyed blonde hair tied back. You can see the natural brown roots coming out. I am wearing my glasses, which have a tortoiseshell frame, and they are, I believe the frame shape is called cat's eye. I'm a white individual. I'm 6'1". I'm a trans woman. I'm 40 years old, and I've got 3 piercings underneath my right eye, and they go in a small, medium, large shape going along the cheekbone, and they direct toward a cluster earring on top of my right ear. And now this time we can actually see both of my stud earrings on my left and right ears, and I've got a nose stud piercing as well. Color palette of my makeup, same as last time. Based on brown, I am currently wearing a gray and black striped, like horizontally striped hoodie, and what's funny is underneath I've got a gray and lighter gray horizontally striped t-shirt. I've got a chain, which is just a very, very basic thin chain with a little gem on it as well too. I'm in my living room / office, beige walls. Behind me is part of my gym, which is my treadmill, my elliptical, and my recumbent bicycle, and just other articles in the living room too, right? Air conditioner and some candles on the mantle and so on. And I think that sums things up pretty decently today. I want to point out that I enjoyed how last week's episode turned out just in terms of overall length as well, so I am going to aim to keep my episodes in and around that same neighborhood going forward. Can't promise that consistently because depending on some of the topics, they do end up having a little more length to them too, but I really feel it hit a nice sweet spot of content that you enjoy. I've noticed in some of the analytics and feedback that it turned out to be really well, so expect that length of time going forward. So let's get started with the first question for this week's episode. What is the greatest accomplishment in your life? It came out. It reminds me of something that I saw on Twitter a long time ago. It was something along the lines of write a story in 3 words in that neighborhood. And again, I came out. I don't know if enough people understand the risk that it takes to come out. Even in 2022, where the world is all fine and dandy and cheek pinching and head patting and this and that and everything else, the amount of perceived loss continues to greatly exceed the amount of hopeful gain. To come out regardless, as a trans woman, how I wasn't the cisgender heterosexual dude everybody thought. Just think about it. If I said that, yes, I'm a trans woman, yes, I'm still into women, so yes, that does make me lesbian now, and because I'm not just interested in any women, I find attraction in people who inspire me, who spark with me, who I love. Demisexual is another element, another layer on top of all that. Those are all things of coming out that not everyone is just like, oh, okay, cool, because it comes with questions and loss and controversy and challenge and so on and so on. And to be where I am today and to be where I continue to go, no question the greatest accomplishment of my life. There's nothing on my resume. There's nothing on, any sort of visibility. There's nothing on any sort of recommendation, referral, advocacy, nothing. Nothing is going to be a greater accomplishment than me taking that step to trust myself, to love myself, and be where I am today. Easy question, easy answer. How do you feel about transphobia within the LGBTQ community? Same way I feel about transphobia within any other community. I don't think that there's much of a conversation beyond that. There's transphobia within the trans community. That's not right either. How do I feel about it? It's frustrating. It's far too common where organizations that would promote themselves with, 2S LGBTQIA plus advocacy or intent often forget the T, to put it simply. And frankly, on top of that, talking about representation in Winnipeg and Manitoba and Canada, I feel there's nowhere near as much two-spirit representation as there has, as much of a responsibility as there is to be. I don't know too much about it off the top of my head, but there's a art project, I believe, in Ottawa that did receive some two-spirit input, so that is certainly fantastic in that regards. But then let's just look at other often forgotten parts of the community too. Intersex. A stat off the top of my head, at least in the US, I believe it's about 1% of Americans are intersex. Intersex doesn't always need to be completely visual to be valid. It's not a common ratio, but that's not an impossible ratio to really conceptualize as well. When it comes to not very far in the future, at the beginning of April, as a matter of fact, there's going to be an awareness date for asexual individuals. And again, that is actually another community that I also am part of too, by extension, as being someone who is demisexual, that is under the asexual spectrum. There's a responsibility across the board to be more mindful not only about trans individuals in the queer community or the 2S LGBTQIA plus community or the LGBTQ community or the LGBTQIA plus community or whatever interpretation you want to use. There's a responsibility to recognize that we all must get that representation, the visibility, the support. It's exceptionally frustrating, of course, within the 2S LGBTQIA plus community, out of the simple principle that that entire group shares a common challenge of oppression, suppression, discrimination, exclusion, isolation, and so on. And that should be more than enough motivation within itself to uplift and support your peers. Because even though you might not completely see eye to eye with what makes them in their little universe on their own, that it might not completely vibe with you, but you can absolutely vibe with why you're part of the 2S LGBTQIA plus community. I'm not cool with transphobia in the community, and I'm also not surprised by it because, like I said, that, you don't need to be privileged to be bigoted. You don't need to not understand what it's like suffering oppression to cause oppression. All I know is that I feel far too often that the T gets forgotten, right? It was almost just coming along for the ride, and I feel very strongly that there's a responsibility within all of the other members of the same community to, to support and uplift, especially considering, like I mentioned, that there's significant overlap. Like within the umbrella itself, I'm trans, demisexual, I'm lesbian. So just that alone are 3 of the letters. You can't support me for being a lesbian, you can't support me for being under the asexual umbrella, and then discriminate me for being a trans woman. It's not how it works. I think that just gets often overlooked in a very, very sad and unfortunate way. Before making a phone call, do you ever rehearse what you're going to say? Why? Before making a phone call, I check to see if there's any other way that I can contact without making a phone call. How's that for a start? I hate outbound phone calls. I don't mind being on the phone. I hate outbound phone calls. I hate outbound phone calls. I hate outbound phone calls. And so to answer the question, do I rehearse what I'm going to say? I hate outbound phone calls is the answer. It's not often so much as a rehearsal, but more like I've always been conditioned to feel like if I make a phone call, there's going to be rejection. For whatever it is. And what's funny too is it's not like calling, Canada Life about my benefits to ask for a date, right? I just hate the idea that it's just not simple, whatever it is. And more often than not, it is. That's the best part, right? If I'm calling, I'll use an example about benefits. Hey, I ended up getting this prescription and whatever. And I'm like, oh, we'll just look at it and da-da-da. And everything's, oh, okay, cool. Here it goes. Makes sense. And I'm off to the way. And everything was fine. There was nothing to worry about. But I absolutely hated having to make the phone call. I avoid making the phone call long before I rehearse what I need to say during the phone call. For what in your life do you feel most grateful? I feel most grateful for learning to love myself. It took me a long time to learn to love myself. It took me a long time to learn to accept myself. And it took me a long time to believe in myself. I spent so much time in my life relying on others to fill voids, to be individuals, to be my safety net, pretty much. And that obviously was actually a very harmful practice because that kept me from recognizing what I needed to do for myself. I mentioned it at the top there when it came to coming out. With full transparency, at the time of this recording, I had a phone call with Clinic, as a matter of fact, regarding trans healthcare because of, for all intents and purposes, let's call it an oopsie. Not a cool oopsie. I'm just going to be very clear about that. I was many shades of livid over the weekend, but again, everything's fine. I had a conversation, and one of the things that was important to me during the conversation about why this phone call had to happen, which by the way was coming to me, I did not call out because my outreach was by an email. To be serious on that though, one of the things that I mentioned to the director of the health services, I'm sure I can speak for most people by saying that transitioning isn't a choice or a decision just to check it out. Transitioning is a result of desperation. If transitioning does not get explored, there might not be any more choices or options. To recognize your desperation and acknowledge that and to go through all of the articles of it. I've spoken about it before, so I'll just recommend to take a look at previous episodes. I don't think it needs to be consistently repeated. Plus, I want you to check out my other content too still, so wink. But realistically, it's a huge step, and it's a huge step where sometimes you might end up doing it alone. You're at least still doing it. And I think that's the thing to be most grateful about, to still be there and still be doing it. And whatever else happens in life happens. I think that's one of the things to be most grateful about. I've said before that in a past life, everything was gray, bleak, meaningless, no inspiration, no hope, and at that time, I represented pretty much the top shelf of privilege. I would never go back, ever. This was the best thing that I've ever done for myself, and frankly, this was the best thing that I've ever done for anyone around me, close to me, who truly love me, because now they've got the best part of me and the best version of me and a consistently bettering version of myself. A past version of myself continued to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into the ground of hopelessness and despair, and this version of myself, sometimes up, sometimes down, because life is life, right? But everyone who gets to have me in their life has, radiance, excitement, passion, love, the best version of me that they could ever ask for or imagine. So I'm so grateful for taking that step. This was a really fun episode. Thank you so much for hanging in there this week, and I'm really grateful that you were able to spend the time with me today. If you enjoyed the content, please hit like, and also while you're here, as I mentioned earlier, please share this with all of your networks, because I can only speak to who I'm able to reach, as I mentioned, and I need you to do me a huge favor to make sure that more people get to experience Dwhell On It and the rest of the channel as well too. If you'd like to have your questions or your comments included in a future episode, please don't hesitate to include them in the comments, as I mentioned, or DM, depending on the platform that you're watching this on. And otherwise, as I mentioned, in the description are 2 fundraisers. Please visit those links. One is for Run for Women, which is supporting women's mental health awareness, and women's wellness programs. And the fundraiser that I am taking part of is providing support to Mood Disorders Association of Manitoba. And the other fundraiser that I'm taking part in is Walk for MD, which provides support and assistance to individuals and the families of individuals who are experiencing anywhere of over 160 neuromuscular disorders, such as muscular dystrophy. The goal for both campaigns is $1,411. You do get a tax receipt for any contribution, so please jump in the description, throw a donation down for any dollar amount that you see fit, get your tax receipt, hit share on those 2, obviously, because again, obviously, more people who get to visit the campaign pages is only for the better. So please do me a huge favor there. Talking about links, there is one other one in the description as well. It's hosted hosted by New Mode, and what that is a call to action to the elected officials in your area so that they are encouraged to incentivize organizations, businesses, and companies in your area based on your postal code to optimize and improve their corporate social responsibilities. So we're considering, their economic standards, their social standards, and so on. So please make sure to take a look at that link. It takes less than a minute to add your voice. There's a pre-made letter, and all you need to do, name, email address, postal code, hit send. It takes less than a minute, as I mentioned, and that letter ends up getting sent to the elected officials in your area, and that is going to be on the federal level, the provincial level, and even the civic level. And no matter where you are, the letters will also get sent to the mayors of Winnipeg and Toronto. So please, again, take a moment to do that. Hit share on that. Big surprise. Your voice is such a powerful tool to help create meaningful change and support marginalized individuals, and all it takes less than a minute. So please help out. Otherwise, we're going to wrap up. I really enjoyed this episode here, and I hope you did too. So like I mentioned earlier, please like, please share, please subscribe. So let's call it a night. Make sure to take a look at the other content if you haven't seen it yet. Stay tuned for exciting content coming up. I'm really excited about posting this series as soon as it's done editing, so please stay tuned for that news. And then otherwise, have a great night. Have a great rest of your week as always. And I'll talk to you later.
Oh.